Well, if you're gonna be legitimate, you're gonna have to have it.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Natasha, how are you?
Good. Who's Santa? Okay. I didn't know who Santa was.
I told him Betsy pulled some pretty good deals, but this tops them.
With the elves and Santa. I forgot my list. Let me make me one real quick.
You about to get done down in Fort Stockton?
Does he know, Cindy, does he know he's up first?
Stuff I cut. Whole roof off.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Didn't want to see it, did you? Oh, big fortress on top of it, I cut it off.
Okay, it's 2:00. I call this meeting to order. Would y'all join us in the invocation given by Mr. Crow?
Thank you. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for a beautiful day. Just thank you for the opportunity for us to come together and to look at the business of the Development Corporation and the city as a whole. And Lord, we just thank you for that ability. We thank you for the knowledge that you've bestowed upon everyone in this room. And we just ask that you continue to grace us with your wisdom, your patience, and your strength as we go through this meeting today. Lord, be with everyone that's here. Be with our members that couldn't be here, and the rest of the city that we call family. We just love you and praise you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, minutes of the last meeting.
I got a couple of issues.
Okay.
I know it's surprising. On page 2, at the top where it says, and there would be new residents, it should be RESIDENTS, not the residents there. And then on the next page, we tabled the annual incentive payment for Select Energy about mid-paragraph. It says Mr. Russell say there were 941 employees. I think he was talking about the Form 941.
Correct.
He was referring to the Form 941 where number of employees were reported. So if you'll change that. And with those corrections, I'd move for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, we would like to, if no one has an issue, I'd like to bring item 7 and 8. Start with 8 first. The gentleman from Weaver and Tidwell has to catch a flight at 4:30, so we want to take care of that business first so he doesn't miss that. So if anyone has any objection, we'll go to item let's start with 8, remove from table and consider resolution approving the compliance consulting services agreement with Weaver. Is that okay? That order, you're okay? Right?
Yes.
So moved.
And,
To remove from the table.
okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay.
Good afternoon, ODC Board. This agenda item is for the consulting agreement with the firm of Weaver and Tidwell. And today we have Jody Allred. He's a partner with Weaver, and he's in charge of the compliance work that's done for the ODC Board. I believe you were emailed out a amended draft copy of the consulting agreement and the attached engagement letter that we go through with, that they're required to have us sign as part of their procedures. And we will discuss that with you. If you have any questions, Jody is here to go over any questions you might have to either the engagement letter or to the contract. Okay?
Yeah, sure. Could you, here's my concern about what we have right now, even with the minor amendments. You know, we ran into the Select Energy issue last meeting, and as we began to look at that, there were a lot of questions that developed about things that were in their payroll numbers, things that were in their employee roster, things like that. And I think in general, we kind of came back to the deal I'd like to better understand the scope of the services you guys have provided, the scope that you'll provide under the new contract, and to open the question of, do we need to make some changes in your scope to give us better information when we make these decisions?
Yeah, I think that that's a smart question. I think that honestly, to know that someone at the ODC board or Cindy and her team is taking that close a look at what we're doing gives us a lot of comfort, honestly, that you take this seriously as a board and those issues are important. And I think the things that we saw in Select certainly were concerning, but didn't change the result at all. We were able to connect those payroll information out to what they're reporting to both federal and state government. And so I think that from that perspective, there wasn't anything wrong with what was looked at. It's just another step to go and say, does it look reasonable that somebody has maybe 8,000 hours in a year? And typically we haven't done that. And if that's something that maybe that highlights that maybe we need to take a pass through and just do a reasonableness check on those things. And I think that pointing that out is a great learning experience for everyone. And we'll take a look at those things going forward. Our typical approach is to try to validate, what the information is that the companies provide to us by tying it out to something else. And typically on the payroll side, that will be tying it out to those payroll records that they're filing with the government. For anything else, for the investments, we're tying that out to the support, the invoices that they're receiving that show that it goes towards what was agreed upon in that agreement with the city. So.
Yeah, because I think we need to do at least, and I know this is not an audit. I know Cindy gets very nervous when I say the word audit every time. She's great. I know this is not an audit, but it looks like some degree of reasonableness checks. I mean, when we saw that, in that Select deal, we saw the payroll numbers, and I'd have to go back to last month's notes. But, payroll numbers, when we looked at things that were in there like auto allowances and things like, they were fairly significant numbers. And in that particular case, we were also dealing with a company that had not met their last obligation in terms of payroll dollars. And so those became a little more significant. Did they miss it by $500,000 or did they miss it by $1.5 million? Because it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1 million of stuff that wouldn't qualify, but it was included when we were reported out the payroll.
I think that the qualification of that is in question, because the agreement that you have with them doesn't really specify. It just says compensation. And if you look at the rules around what defines what is compensation.
Actually, the contract says compensation defined as salary, vacation time, and sick time. When you read the original contract that was done in 2016. Hence our concerns of why home allowance, car allowance, relocation pay, per diem, among other things were included. The contract also specified that there wouldn't be any income included for owners of the company of at least 20%, which we didn't see any documentation plus or minus for that, though. We had documentation in there where we had employees that were fired before they were hired. It just looked like somebody went to the very bottom of the number that the company gave them and used that number. When we went in and we were very lucrative when we added in salary, we added vacation time, and we probably added 4 or 5 things. We thought, okay, but it really wasn't specified in the contract. We were still at $9 million in payroll when they're required to have 11.1.
Which
So-
they still didn't meet their obligation.
And here's the reason why it's important, because compliance committee came to us and said, we realized they didn't meet their obligation, but you know what, they were kind of close, and they've done so good over the last 4 years. So the numbers you give us are very important.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I'm kind of raking you over the coals a little bit here.
I hear you. I understand, and I think that whenever something's pretty close, maybe we need to take another deeper look at some of those things, and that's some good feedback from you on that. Then when we see that maybe that we're close to one of those
My point,
lines.
where's your threshold that you take a closer look where you, if they're close on compliance and it could go either way, I think there ought to be something in the margins or threshold where you.
Well, the
dive
procedures
into
can
it
be
deeper.
whatever we need them to be. We're operating under a consulting arrangement. We're not providing assurance on the numbers. My recollection from taking over this project as a partner was that historically this evaluation had been done internally inside of ODC, and those evaluations ended up taking a long time to get done. And so you tackle a problem of trying to get things done with outsourcing those, and maybe you lose a little bit of visibility into the relationship that way. But I think that we are able to jump on things when the city needs them, and we're doing our best to do what you need to do for a really low amount, and trying to satisfy what you're trying to accomplish, and with the narrowest scope possible to keep the board from overpaying for compliance. And so
And you did say really low amount. You know, what does Weaver typically bill on an evaluation like this? To just use, because we're talking about Select Energy, let's just use Select Energy for example. And I believe you bill Select Energy direct for those, correct? As opposed to ODC, is that right, Cindy?
no.
Okay, so the contract said
The
that
contract
the
is with
customer would pay for
ODC.
the audit, so I assume they did. But what do you typically bill on something like that?
The contract says $5,000 per compliance audit. Some of those we
Is less.
do better on, and some of those we do less on. So
And sometimes that depends on how much time they have to spend getting information from the companies. Okay,
Thank you.
so that does, and so the more procedures we want to add to the consulting agreement, the more expensive it's going to be. I re-looked at this, auto allowance, while I think we probably need to dig deeper into the contract, what we have historically looked at is it compensation that's required to be reported on the quarterly reports that they're tying that amount out to. And auto allowance is included in W-2 wages. So there's a little bit of a disconnect between what you may be saying strictly in the contract and what you're trying to do in the compliance check.
Well, I'm assuming, do you guys get a copy of the original contract when you're trying to verify if
Yes,
they've
they
met it
do.
or not? You know, the contract's pretty clear
Right.
in exactly what it called for. You know, when
Right.
it
No.
defines salary, sick time,
Yeah.
overtime, and that's,
So we could have them
overtime and.
take the total, tie it out to the quarterly reports, and then you back out certain numbers to get back to that number. But then you're not saying, I tied it out to the 941s and the total amount of X. Okay? So it's just a difference of what, I guess, the practice has kind of been with that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, moving forward, that our contract clearly defines what metrics we're using and that we tie everything strictly to those metrics. That way we don't get into fuzzy areas and gray areas and, well, you did this over here and you did that over here. I know that each one of those contracts has a little bit of individual negotiation,
Right.
but whatever the contract says, that's what we need to make sure Weaver knows, compliance knows, that we know, and we're holding everybody's feet to the fire based upon whatever it is in the contract. The other thing that Chris noticed was that that the original contract called for the recipient to pay for the cost of the audit or the review, and it doesn't sound like that.
I don't recall seeing that there was a copy of the contract. Our experience has been that no one has ever paid for the compliance review except the ODC itself. The companies have never paid for those. And I've been with the ODC since 2010.
Okay, but we've only been outsourcing that service.
Are we 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, so it's not like, you know, we've been doing it for 20 years.
Since 2016, we have been outsourcing it, so for 5 years now.
Yeah, and that would be a decision for the board to make, how we want, but again, just whatever the contract says, that's what I wanna make sure we do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and maybe I would say it a little bit differently too. I think we're gonna end up at the same place. I don't really care whether, I don't think we ought to trigger, I don't think we ought to have scope in there that's triggered by whether the numbers are close or not. I don't care about that, because if they exceeded their dollar amount, we nailed down the FTEs and it's right, but they exceeded their dollar amount because there's items in there that are not, and they turn out to be substantial. I mean, they could be exceeded by quite a bit, but still, in reality, when you backed out the right numbers, you know, that they fall short. So I don't think we ought to be, but I do think there's some way, and I don't know how to word it, or if you have a suggestion, Cindy, I do think that there ought to be a process in place that's looking at those reports for reasonable information. So, and again, how do we do that? I don't know exactly how to do it, but I don't think you need to nail down, you know, each and every number. But if it doesn't look reasonable, then I think it ought to be explored and figure out what the problem is there.
I think we could reasonably add a reasonableness check on the payroll information that we're obtaining.
Okay.
Rather than just a tie out, which is what the historical procedure has been.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would add a significant amount to our scope that we would have to change our fee or
Okay.
anything.
Yeah, I mean, literally in this case of Select Energy, I mean, we probably spent, Chris and I did we probably spent 30 minutes just scanning their payroll report because we were just trying to get, and we started really noticing things, people that were fired before they were hired, people that made $16,000 in one day, things like that just look, I mean, I would expect at least sometime, and I'll call it a sanity check, that somebody is scanning that stuff. You don't have to go into great, you know, I don't think within our scope of what we'd want you guys to do is spend, you know, 80 hours looking through it line by line. But we do need somebody that will give it kind of a sanity check and, you know, look at it with a reasonable eye and say, does this make sense?
Yeah.
Does this does this fit the contract? A, that's a yes or no. And then B, to give it that, you know, that perusal just for, you know, a sanity check.
And I think one of the things that I kind of halted the whole process of approving that at the last meeting because the way it was reported was very weird looking from what you're typically seeing. Part of that I do think comes from them doing it on an annual basis, but another part of that is understanding that they have multiple employees that are paid round the clock because they're on call round the clock. And so they're making like $14.50 an hour. So it's not that they're making a lot of money, but it's not because they're being paid a high amount. It's because they're out on location or they're there 24 hours a day. And so, you know, when you first look at it and you think about employees having more than 5,000 hours in a year, it looks really strange. What was added to that was the fact that the overtime hours were double counted because of how their system does it. It takes all hours, regular and overtime hours, at the regular rate, and then they have an overtime rate times the number of overtime hours. So those overtime hours are both in the overtime line item and in the regular line item. And so when you go back through, and as the report changed back to 205 FTEs, you had to take out 175,000 hours because of how their report works. Okay.
My
So
point
I
is,
think
I would expect for Weaver to catch something like that.
Well, I think, again, they looked at the total page. Does this total dollar amount tie out to the 941s? Yes, it did. Here's total hours divided by 1820. Now, the reasonableness should have been caught, and it probably should have been caught by me as well. Why would they have 301 FTEs at about the same amount, and yet they're only required to have 170? So it should have been something that was caught, yes.
I'd like maybe a couple other comments. One is, I think at some time in the future, we probably ought to discuss what the definition of compensation is for us when we're going to contract with a grantee, and make sure that we're all on the same page in that regard. And then I think we also, when we execute a contract and when we are providing grant funds, I think we need to make sure that the grantee understands that we're not expecting, we want information submitted to us that makes sense. Because they could have done some due diligence, and I think they printed off the report, it probably fed from one software program to another or something, and they just didn't look at it, other than probably the totals too. So, but we ought to expect that out of the grantee too.
Awesome. I do have some concerns with the contract. I believe that Weaver probably wrote this contract. Ms. Brooks, did you have a chance to review this? Did you have any comments on the Weaver contract itself?
This is our top form that we attach so that we know, that we have reviewed. The letter of engagement is Weaver's.
This is our legal department's contract. This
Yes.
is city,
So the first,
I'm talking about this one.
that's the
You're talking about
letter of
this one?
engagement from
Mm.
Weaver, which
This
is
one
an
here.
attachment
Okay.
to the contract form.
Do we have a copy of our contract form? Could I peruse it real quick? I haven't seen our contract. I assumed that this letter of engagement basically was our contract. 'Cause it has
No,
a place for them to sign, it has a place for us to sign on it, so.
that's mine. So
For every engagement that you do,
no, those
consulting
are our proposed changes. I'm sorry, Cindy. Go ahead.
with a CPA firm for any type of consulting or review or audit services, they have to have an engagement letter, and it has to be signed so that both parties understand the content of the engagement letter. And there are certain things they're required to put in that.
So I think the way that the city has structured this is they've taken our engagement letter and wrapped it in their consulting services agreement, which we're in the process of reviewing that as well through our legal counsel.
Yes.
Are we supposed to vote on the contract today?
I mean, I
You
would.
can, but you can
Yeah.
table it also if
Yeah,
you like.
I'd like to propose that we table it, because there's a couple things that I'd like to go back and sit down maybe with Weaver and talk about in their engagement letter, which would then form the basis for the contract. I mean, we've talked about a couple things here about, maybe a little bit, deeper dive into it and doing some type of reasonableness check and something like that. I think we need to go back and define what that is.
Yeah,
So
I
that
think
we're comfortable with
we can
it.
certainly get more specific in the engagement letter if that's what you wanna see. What's challenging is some of the agreements with the grantees are different, and so
Sure.
you start trying to dictate engagement letter level procedures, it gets difficult, but there's nothing that says we couldn't put together a document that says these are the procedures that we would expect to perform.
Yes, sir.
And provide that to you, to give you some comfort about knowing
A lot of things.
how
I
we're
mean,
gonna change things.
I'd be happy with a checklist. These are
Okay,
the things
yeah.
we're gonna check. We're gonna check their payroll numbers to make sure that only the contracted terms, whatever the contract states is gonna be done. We're gonna do some sanity checks. We're gonna look at, their payroll run to make sure we don't have things like we found with Select where people were fired before they were hired, and, just some cursory checks like that. And then, checking payroll, so just literally a little checklist that we know you guys have gone through these 5 steps or 6 steps, and maybe a little worksheet type deal that you could, because we don't see, when we get to this, we don't see their 941s or anything like that.
Right.
Probably don't need to, but it'd be nice to see what those numbers are reported on. We compare their 941 number to their payroll. Their 941 number was this, their payroll report said this. If there's any discrepancy, why? A little synopsis. I think something as simple as a worksheet that could be provided to us would be extremely helpful to let us know kind of what traps were run. And if there were some things that you guys detected that you had to go back to the grantee to seek clarification on, that you'd have a little, and I'm talking about volumes and stuff, I'm talking about, 2 or 3 sentence synopsis. We had to go back to them because their payroll report added both overtime and FTE and all this, all this stuff together, and so we had to go back and that's why it looks wonky on the report.
Okay, let's, I entertain a motion to table this.
So move.
Second.
Second,
So,
do it.
go ahead with your vote, and then ask the question.
Any more discussion before we vote?
How would the board like us to handle any open work that we're working right now? Would you like us to stop until you approve? If you're gonna table this?
Do we have any coming up?
What do we have in?
We have several that have a December period in that we're getting ramped
They're
up on,
working
and we've got
on-
some that that we're working right now.
West Texas Food Bank is one of them because we were waiting on information. I think y'all gotten that in now to do the cooler and the truck and trailer. So we're trying to get that payment to them.
Would the work that's open, as you proceed through it, assist you in determining the scope of work more clearly? Because I might recommend they go ahead and go through it, continue work, but maybe it gives them it helps them as a kind of a cheat sheet, if you will, to figure out what the scope of work should be.
Brooks, is there any way we can use like a 30-day extension on this and then vote on this, the full contract extension next month?
I don't think our current contract is null and void until y'all approve a new one, so.
So we would continue under the current contract
Mhm.
until such time as we.
That
Yes.
might,
We okay with it?
I'm fine with that. I just didn't wanna
Yeah.
not talk about the work that's currently
Right.
ongoing.
Yeah.
We
Because
don't
we
have-
have 3 currently that should be wrapping up in the next couple of weeks.
We don't have a problem with
okay, so, go ahead and table it and with the,
that. Yeah, let me amend my motion
Yes.
I motion that we table the vote on the contract until we've had
Renewal.
time to review it, but at the same time, we extend this contract until the point to where we've had a chance to review, Weaver's had a chance to review, because I have a feeling there's gonna be some changes in there.
you okay with this amendment?
Yes.
Okay. With that, first and a second, okay, no more discussion, call for a vote, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign? Okay.
Thank you for your time today.
Do you
Uh,
want him to be back at the January meeting, or do you wanna wait till y'all give me an okay for, he comes from Dallas, so.
I would suggest that,
Plan on,
yeah, let us get together and let us talk about the current contract and some things that we do. Send it over to you guys, have y'all look at it, and once we kinda have a deal, then let's all get together.
and let's try to,
Excellent. Yeah.
let's try to pencil in the next meeting, January meeting, that way we'll get it done,
I agree.
both sides. Is that fair?
That's excellent, yes.
Would you
Okay.
like to work with legal on the contract, and that way we can work together and we will make all changes, and that way we can send it over?
Sure.
Thank
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Before we meet, just put yourself in our seats.
Oh, absolutely.
In audit and legal, what would you look for and when you saw something like this, what would you do?
No, I completely understand the questions and the concerns, and I would have the same. And so I'm not surprised that we're talking about it. So I appreciate the fact that you care about it and that you're taking a look at it. That's all I can say, and that we'll further clarify what you want, and we'll do what you want.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Moving to item number 7, need a motion to remove from the table and consider resolution approving annual incentive payment of Select based on Compliance Committee recommendation. It's got Cindy and I here, but we've asked him to stay in case there's any more questions on Select.
So moved.
We got a motion,
Second.
second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay. Cindy, I'll turn it over to you,
Okay,
since we together kind of
right.
stopped that, so.
So, in going back and recalculating the FTEs, the total amount was 205 FTEs based on taking all of the duplication of the overtime hours out. This was notified to the compliance committee chairman, and I believe they're still of the opinion that we could go forward with making this payment. I think it's $18,000, a little over $18,000 to Select. This is the 3rd year of their 5-year contract.
And the dollars difference, the dollars shortfall was?
The dollar shortfall is just under $1 million. Out of their requirement is $11,156,406, and the total was $10,256,695, and that's based on the assumptions that we have talked about earlier already.
What all payroll was included in your $10 million estimate? The reason is the reports that we finally received, where we went in and stripped out a bunch of the housing allowance, car allowance, stuff like that. I mean, we got pretty liberal. I think we included a bunch of stuff that wasn't even listed in the contract. We were only at $9 million.
The auto allowance was $165,000. The housing allowance was $300. No, it was $30,000. Okay, and I mean, there's bonuses that are included in this. There's commission pay. There's vacation, holiday, bereavement pay, severance pay, of course, overtime. So all of those things are included in that amount.
So they're off about 8%.
Yes.
And then, the numbers we saw previously, they were over like 24% and 48% or something like that.
Yes,
If
in
you-
prior years,
If
they
you cut those in
exceeded.
half, they were over 12 and 24. Again, I'm trying to be conservative.
Is the contract written to where next year, if they're over by a certain amount, they can come back and recoup this?
No.
No, it's not.
No, I think what's happened in the past is, from time to time, you'll have a situation just like we did with the pandemic where, there are things that are beyond our control. And I think the important thing is that the jobs were maintained and certainly exceeded. If they had to reduce salaries in order to keep those people on the payroll, that's the important piece. And in the past, even if you got conservative and cut those increases in half, they're still well over what they had committed to provide. So that's the way I'm looking at it.
And this is for the calendar year 2020.
What was their contract requirement on the FTE side?
170.
170.
170, and they were at 205.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And I think that and the pandemic is the driving force for compliance, allowing it to happen, to go forward as a payment.
I think it's an extenuating circumstance. You got an employer out there that's maintaining those jobs, actually exceeding the number of jobs that needed to be maintained. So I'm very comfortable with this year. I mean, we're gonna look at it again next year. They don't get paid
Well,
until after the fact.
My problem is just in looking at the errors and the way, in this review, I'm not overly comfortable that the review for the prior years
Well,
is
and that,
overly accurate.
well, and
So-
that's why I said cut it in half. If you adjust, the fact that it was, you know, in effect, stated twice.
This is their final payment, isn't it?
No,
No,
this
they
is
still
the third in a 5-year.
Third of five.
Didn't it start in 2016?
No, 2016 is, when we started using Weaver. I believe
Ms. Brooks,
on
wasn't the contract signed in 2016?
well, it depends on when they get their investment completed and they get their jobs completed as to when we start paying them.
What was the first year of payment?
The payments began, and it may have fallen in the it shows 18 to 19. If you'll look, I'm looking at the financial statement that shows what we've paid out so far. We've paid them, this would be their third year. That's correct. Or is this fourth, Larry? Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Jefferson didn't, if I remember correctly, I was at the compliance meeting. There was discussion of paying them like 80% because they had reached that level, a percentage of that.
My initial, throw out of this is, since they were under on the compliance, the dollar amount, we wanted to get into the weeds of it and do a pro rata.
Right.
Do a 92% payment since they were at that. And the further we looked at it and the further we considered, our original motive
Right.
behind the point of the board of doing these grants to these companies and what we expect them to achieve and what they achieved during the pandemic and 2 years prior.
Right.
We just, there's no point. I mean, it's just ticky-tacky.
Well, the reason I'm bringing it up is say it's 92% of $18,000. We're spending a lot of time over here on,
Yeah.
on,
Analysis paralysis, because it'd be 16,000 versus 18,000, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We just send it up.
okay. I just wanted to make that note that we did this, it was discussed, and also with what the changes we're gonna make with Weaver and going forward, I think we can more than, I don't think we'll be in this position again. Is that a fair statement to everyone? So,
And if I may.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of out of order here, but just because it was mentioned concerning the previous years, I think the reason for the difference in reporting and some of the numbers that got confused, double reported, is in 2020, they were using a brand new reporting system for their payroll and employment tracking, separate from what they used in the prior 2 years.
so there's some difference there, okay?
Well, I would make a motion to approve the payment, and just to clarify, I think they're 20% over in the number of jobs, 8% under in the number of dollars in the payroll. They've exceeded it. I'm confident that they've exceeded it in the future years, even if you temper those numbers to some degree. And I think because of the extenuating circumstances with the pandemic and them having the ability to continue to maintain the jobs, I think it's a show of good faith with regard to what we were trying to contract for, which was good paying jobs. I would move for approval of the payment.
Got a motion, can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, got a second. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay. Note that Mr. Crowe was the nay vote. Thank you. All right. Tracy, sorry to keep you waiting. Well, I didn't wake you up there. We need to move back up to our contractors' reports.
I wasn't snoring too loud. How are y'all doing today?
Good.
Good. Okay, of course you had the big update with the Nacero when Hal was here last time, but I'll just, a couple other quick little things on that. You know, they did get their TCEQ air permit approved, and they've closed on some of the property that they're going to be building on. The rest of the property will be closed on by mid-January. The general contractor, they parted ways with Bechtel amicably, and will be moving forward and feel that they're gonna be able to use more local contractors and subcontractors on this project now, so that's better for the citizens of Odessa. Their bid packets will be going out by the end of this month, and they're still planning a groundbreaking by just shortly after the first of the year, probably January, maybe early February. We're still working with the CTV project. They continue to negotiate their tax abatement agreements with some of the taxing entities, so we're still not quite there yet for them to submit their packet to the company to decide for sure where they're gonna put this project. It's pretty much either gonna be here or New Mexico, is my understanding. And going along with that, we just met with another engineering firm yesterday that is doing a feasibility study on another carbon capture project that they're looking at putting here in Ector County. So that's very, very early in the process. They have started their 313 process application with ECISD because that takes the longest amount of time to do. But that's, like I say, early in the process. I did talk with the GIS that we've been reporting in our activity report, and they are under new management again. And so I forwarded the economic development agreement that they had been looking at to their finance manager, and they're going to look at that. They're still going to move forward with their expansion project. They just aren't real sure they want to go ahead with the ED agreement. So, but at least we'll still get the jobs out of it. Let's see. Still working with the project Roadrunner that is looking that we got received from the governor's office a couple months ago. We supplied a few more items of information for them, and they're still saying hopefully after the first of the year they'll be back for a second visit with their customer, and maybe we can move forward from there. That's going to be a 26 job engineering firm. Jefferson's going to give you an update on the project build. We have shared grant applications with 7 local companies that are potentially going to do expansion projects, which is quite a few for this time of year. They're all in just various stages of the application and the review process. We did submit one of the projects to compliance, and Jefferson will be reporting on that one also. We are scheduled to go to the SHOT Show in January with the High Ground Group. It's a big gun and ammo manufacturing and tactical gear show in Las Vegas, and we are set up in the manufacturing section of the exhibit hall for Monday and Tuesday, the first 2 days of the show. So we usually get a lot of, we participate, this will be the 3rd year, and we get a lot of activity by the booth and get some pretty good leads from that. And we have also been participating with the Team Texas Winter Virtual Mission. They had identified 6 companies that were interested in Texas as a possible site for future expansion, and they're just.
What was that called, Tracy?
It's Team Texas Winter Virtual Meetings. Yeah, it's another one of the marketing groups that we're members of. And we have participated in 3 of the 6 meetings so far. And that's kind of all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions for Tracy?
Is this a good time to ask about any update on?
We can tell you that we have located a person. We have, Renee is working on an offer to him, and we hope to have him here before February 1st, if not sooner. Is that close enough? Yes. Okay. And I think you'll be very, very pleased. So,
thank you.
okay. Is Craig here? There he is. His bow tie.
I'm greatly disappointed I came in 4th in holiday clothing today. Thank you for
a distant 4th.
Thank
a
you.
distant 4th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love you too. Marketing activities have wound down just slightly these last 2 months and beginning in November with the shortened months with the holidays and everything. But I will tell you that the television and the outdoor and the newspaper continues to push business retention and expansion locally. And so I'm hoping some of that exposure encourage some of that activity from those companies as we go into the end of the year. Have not seen a lot of activity or direct phone calls from our direct mail piece, but we think that's going to pick up as well. 745 of those to exhibitors of the oil show. But the good news is also on our website that our geofencing of the oil show has pushed some interest to the landing page that we set up on the ODC website. And so that seems to be effective, and we're excited about that. Social media overall was down slightly in the month of November, but we had a very, very strong October, and so that's not to be unexpected. The most popular posts we did were on the I-40 extension going through Midland, Odessa, which we're very encouraged by, and also ConocoPhillips purchasing the Royal Dutch Permian assets, which is always good news. So we're hoping that the end of the year ends up with some more activity in local, and that the new year begins with some of those feedback from oil companies from the oil show. Any questions I can answer for anyone?
Any questions?
I'll ask one. Just
Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
So what was our bill to CBA for the month of November ballpark? And then I may have to direct that to Ms. Muncy.
Yeah, you might have to. Normally, Chris, they range anywhere from 35 to 45,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can't state specifically what it was.
No problem. Thank you for answering.
Yeah, you
Appreciate
bet. You bet.
Any other questions? Okay. Chris, Black Chamber of Commerce.
Mr. Chairman, board members, first of all, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year, because I hope I don't see you till first of next year. I'm gonna read this, and I'm gonna keep it short. I already had the heavy hitters up here, and my glasses broke when I went to put them on. So I'm gonna read this pretty blind. I'll push this way away so I can see it. Our activity as well for the last month was down. And we know this is because of the holidays, where that's understandable. We were very happy to say that our first annual turkey leg tussle was a big success. We were able to make a sizable donation to the Woodson Young Scholar Academy. This will help them do repairs, paint work, so we were very proud of this. This was our first, and it went well. We thank all of our sponsors and helpers and workers and the players and anybody that took part in this event. So we were able to help a small business do some very needed improvements. We were able to do a second meeting with two gentlemen. They are in the process of developing their a driving school. They eventually want to get into truck driving, which we know there's a shortage of. They're looking for a facility, so they're in the process, and we're probably going to pass them off to Tyler and the SBDC to assist us in this. We want them to hit the ground running and get them going, because we know there's a shortage of truck drivers, as well as and we know we have people that can't drive, so we need them to assist with them as well. Because of the holidays here tomorrow, we will offer free, we will work with hand in hand with St. James Baptist. We're going to pass out food baskets and boxes and packages. We usually have between 150 to 200 families. We have a lot of families that are not back completely on their feet right now. So we want this to continue. We will try to do this as long as we see a need for this. So if you know of anyone, they are welcome to come by the church. We're going to give free food. It's going to be a drive-through environment. We will load them up. They will not have to get out. So we're trying to stay within COVID protocol. So they'll be in a safe environment.
That'll be on what day?
That's going to be tomorrow from 11 o'clock to 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock at St. James Baptist. And we're going to try to, we know that we have families that are in need, that are to the point where they have to choose between paying their rent or purchasing toys for their children. We're going to have a toy drive. This is going to be on the 18th, and this also will be at St. James. This is going to be from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock that we will give out these free toys. And what we will do when we have incorporated that we're going to give out 200 free meals to the people that attend. When they come in to pick up toys for their children, we're going to give them a free hot meal. So this will be sponsored in part with one of our small businesses in the Black Chamber, in part with St. James Baptist. So we're trying to do some different events to help make sure that we have no one that go hungry or get neglected during the holiday season. We want to help as much as we can. We thank the board for everything you've helped us with this year. We've made large and great strides with the Black Chamber. We're in a position we never thought we'd see ourselves in. And we thank you guys and ladies for being a big part of that. So thank you. Any questions?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I did good without my glasses.
Thank you.
Okay, UTPB, Tyler?
Good afternoon. You've got the report in your packet, but I wanted to go over a couple of highlights. For the month of November, obviously it was a short month for us as well as everybody else, but we ended up with 285 counseling sessions, 202 counseling hours. We originally had 2 seminars or workshops scheduled. One of them had to be canceled because of a conflict, scheduling conflict. That one will be rescheduled for after the first of the year. The one we had was how to start your own business. We had 9 people attend that. We had 5 new businesses in the area. Among these was a recycling pickup service, an educational center, a trucking company, another tea franchise, and a beauty school. So all kind of fit in our little wheelhouse there. 2 of those were in Odessa. Total capitalization for the month was a little over $500,000, about $183K of that in Odessa. 6 new FTEs for the area, and I believe 2 of those were Odessa. For the month of December, we've got 2 workshops scheduled. Get another short month for us. We're doing actually SWOT analysis workshop, and then we will have a business structure workshop just before the Christmas break next week. So that's what we got going on. Any questions?
Do you see participation at your workshops fall off around the holidays?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Holidays in June and July typically, although this, during the COVID time, kind of throw all that out because it just varies on what's going on economically. Last June and July, we had really good participation, but normally that's a slow time as well.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays to all of you.
You too.
Okay, Santa Claus, it is showtime.
Ho, ho, ho.
You know, at the last meeting where y'all decided to have this meeting, Tim, we're not gonna put you on the naughty list for that, but, you know, it was close. two of your members dared that nice James Beecham at the Motran to dress up as Santa for this meeting to bring a little holiday cheer. And you can see what happened to those two members. So let that be a lesson to all of you. But in the immortal words of the Geesenslaws, if there ever was a time to lighten up, it's Christmas. And so today, we're here to bring a little bit of cheer. You know, Santa Claus does his research. And I want you to know that the Permian Basin last year was responsible for 40% of all the crude production in the United States. That last year, in the fiscal year, you attributed $1.4 billion in state sales tax, nearly $3 billion in severance taxes, $1.3 billion for the Permanent University Fund, and $1.4 billion for the Permanent School Fund. So we're just going to take the Permian Basin and put everybody in it on the nice list this year because you've done a lot of good for the rest of the state. In addition to that, now we may have to check on Tracy Jones. I've had some complaints on her, but we're going to work that out and see if we can get that taken care of before today. Renee put in a good word for us. So as a side note, we're going to convert all the naughty people's stockings from coal to natural gas from the Permian Basin. Is another good thing. And third and finally, so you don't think we're just making a joke out of all these proceedings, I want you to know that in the process, myself and two elves, and our ability and willingness to humiliate ourselves just a little bit more than normal, are raising some money for Toys for Tots this year because not everybody's had that great of a year, and we have, and we're going to help them out. That's part of what's been so great about this organization, this whole group. Thank you, and Merry Christmas.
Any questions?
Question. So I was
Now
looking.
remember, I've got to get out of here before Christmas, and at the rate we're going.
Yes, sir, Santa, we wouldn't want to hold you up.
But come next April, I'll regret having said that. So you know what? Take all the time you want.
On your I-14 airline campaign, your social media, you had fantastic results. So this was for 2 months, correct? For September and October, the results?
The one that I handed out to you last month, that's correct, was for 2 months.
Okay, awesome. So out of curiosity as a comparison, because I was kind of lining it up with what some of what our regular social media was, ballpark monthly cost on your social media, if you don't mind me asking?
Generally, we run about $2,100 a month.
Okay.
I think one of those months we started scaling back Facebook because Facebook has been a little bit weird here lately. But like I said, it runs generally probably $2,100 to $1,800 a month, just depending on the month.
Okay. I was just comparing your 105,000 reaches to our 914, your 210,000 impressions to our 1,350, your 43,000 through plays to our 18, and your 1,421 to our 80. So,
well, it was extraordinary. I will say this: I think some of those were pretty popular. The interstate. Some people evidently like Southwest Airlines and direct flights, and I think hearing Ted Cruz say nice things about the Permian Basin, a lot of people talking about Midland and Odessa being Texas on steroids, which what a great message is that. Enjoy that. So that may have helped us out there some.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. And since you mentioned Tracy, I'd like to take this time to thank her for helping us through this interim period, and we hope she has met our candidate, and I think she's got a nod of approval, and we just want to say thank you for helping us. We're not through it yet. We still got, he may not be here till February 1st, so, but we hadn't missed a step with her, and I just want to make note of that to everybody. Okay, Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, member of the board. I have no idea how to follow that, so let me at least start there. Does everyone have a copy of the financial report? I do. I have brought some extra copies in case there was any missing, but just want to make a few highlights on there. As far as the finances goes, pages 1 and 2, the total assets on page 1 decreased by a total of $1,676,929 from September to October to a total of $59,622,006. That's primarily due to the $2.2 million in business incentive payments that were made to UTPB. And in a similar vein, on page 2, you'll see the total revenues year to date, which is simply for 1 month at this time, October. We had revenues of $872,857 and total expenditures for the fiscal year of $2,574,786. And again, the $2.2 million is the lion's share of that as well. As far as investment information, you'll see we did not purchase any securities during October. Since then, we have purchased 2 $1 million par value each. One settled on December 2nd for Connecticut state taxable GOs. That yields 20 basis points on about it's about a 7-month security to maturity. The second one will settle next week, early next week on the 13th. West Orange, New Jersey, taxable general obligations yielding 30 basis points, maturing 11/11 or about 11 months on that security. We've also had a lot of discussions with a number of our approved brokers to try to look at different philosophies and ways of dealing with those kinds of investment opportunities given the interest rate environment that we're in. And we're looking at different ways of perhaps trying to better maximize yields as part of that process too. But that's kind of where we're at right now in the investment side of things. But we have $2 million that are in process or have been purchased at this point subsequent to the report date.
So $1 million each, is that what you
$1
said?
million each, yes, sir. Par.
Thank you.
Yes. On page 3, you'll see a listing of the reserve, both short-term and long-term commitments. I won't go through each one of them because there's a number of changes and updates given the fact that we went into a new fiscal year where we have the upcoming year, the fiscal year 22, expected payments being made up into the short term and being brought up from the long term to the short term. But if there's any questions, I'll be happy to deal with that. But you'll just see basically just a reflection of what's anticipated through the cash flow analysis you've had previously as far as what we would be looking at expending during the upcoming year. And finally, the sales tax revenue for December, we just received those numbers, I believe, yesterday. The ODC portion of the sales tax collections for December 2021 were $899,595, which was an increase of $133,021 compared to the same month last year. That equates to a 17.35% increase from 1 December to last December. On a fiscal year-to-date basis, which is now 3 months, October through December, the total collected for these 3 months was $2,873,319, which is an increase of $457,375, or 18.92% compared to the same 3-month period in the last fiscal year, which was the last quarter of 2020. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to address any questions or anything that the board may have.
Questions? Okay, none. I need a motion to move the financial report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Jefferson, if you'll come up, I need a motion to remove from the table and consider the economic development agreement with Roads USA LLC.
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
And a second?
That was
All
the
in favor
roads.
signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Okay, Jefferson, take off.
Was that the roads one? we were
Yes,
taking
sir.
off
I've got
of?
the roads one first, number 4.
Okay. Compliance Committee, after lots of discussion and deliberation and analysis, we recommend that the ODC Board to fund Roads USA a job creation grant of $1,097,298 to be paid out over 5 years at a rate decided by the ODC Board. Capital investment grant will be $73,098 for equipment if they lease a building. If they build, the grant would be $461,706. And that's a $10 million proposed build. And that's the grant for that investment. Also to be paid over 5 years.
Okay.
My report's not very exciting.
And this is, okay, this is the that they're building the manufacturing plant.
That's correct, yes.
That's what, it doesn't have anything to do with the,
Yeah, to be
house
noted,
structure.
there was two different matrix that were part of the original analysis and decision. Actually, there was three. One of them was looking at just the manufacturing jobs to be created. The second one at the construction jobs, and then a third one with both of them combined. This grant is proposed based on only the manufacturing jobs.
that's the, okay. Any questions?
I just have one. I don't know if I need to pose it to you, Jefferson, or to Norma, but I was just curious, because obviously I sit on compliance, and by all stretch of the imagination, I do not want ODC to have to go through 3,000 pages of material that compliance committee got to. But seeing as how we had 3,000 pages of material, I was just curious as to why not all materials for item 4 were available at the time of posting the agenda, and we never received anything afterwards. As far as more detail other than a blurb about this long saying compliance committee.
I know there was issues with sending out the large package.
I mean, like I said, I don't want to see 3,000 pages in ODC,
Yeah.
but unless these guys do. But I would like to see a lot more than just what we saw.
Well, and I noticed on this one as well as the Taylor one,
Mhm.
I mean, I think the whole compliance, application or whatever this is this summer is actually about 5 or 6 pages long because it has payroll estimates and things like that. And we didn't get any of that info either. I mean, we got the first, 3 pages of it and didn't get the back 2 or 3 or 4, however many. Is there a reason?
Oh, I don't know about what was sent out to the board. That's above my payroll.
We'll have to check and
So
see.
you guys compliance sent all 6 or 7 pages of the application?
The application.
Tracy?
A lot of the reason why they do not put that in there is because payroll information is listed in that application. And, unless we change it where it's just attached or something, it's why we have never posted that in the packets before, because it does have specific job, number of jobs with the payroll, with the.
Well, that's gonna become
hour.
part of their contract. I mean, why would that not be brought forward to
Well,
ODC?
Well, the contract's gonna be a total, it won't be a breakdown for each position, because we asked them to break it down by each position and the amount, because we have a different, on the matrix, we have for the different, levels of pay.
Superintendent,
Right.
managers, et
Yeah.
cetera.
And we have a different, factor that we use as to the dollar amount that they get for that job.
The higher paying job, the higher incentive.
Right.
Yeah, I can just say that I am increasingly uncomfortable and unhappy about the scant amount of information that we get on these when we're talking about spending, in this case, whatever the dollar amount is, $1 million in taxpayer funds. And it's this board, it's the ODC board, that's been entrusted to make those decisions ultimately. And when we don't see anything more than a kind of narrative on we don't see any of those details. We don't know how many jobs, we don't know what kind of jobs they are. We just don't know any of those details. I mean, I'm increasingly uncomfortable at voting on something like that because we don't have any details. I don't have much of a basis as an ODC board member to make a decision one way or the other.
Well, and I think we've talked about this before, and we need some way to standardize and improve what's being delivered. And I'll be happy to help do that. I think I know what we're looking for. I think I know what the compliance committee looks at, and there ought to be a way to provide additional information, and still protect trade secrets and all those kinds of things that we're concerned about.
Yes.
Can I ask, because what we used to do was, and again, I'm not any more joyous of having long meetings than anybody else, but don't we have a specific article where we can adjourn into executive session specifically for contract review? And therefore, everything wouldn't have to be in the packet. We could go into executive session, have that information, visit for a few minutes, come out of executive, make a decision.
Yes, we do have that specific economic development exception.
But I don't think it's necessary, Chris. I think we can get good information And then if there are questions, we can always say, look, I got questions about this. Let's,
Okay.
you know, I make a motion, we go into executive session under such and such and such. We can do it at that point.
Okay.
But I'll be happy to help.
Was the information provided a summation of the rest of that material, or is there pertinent information that was provided to the ODC board?
We have on this particular one,
Because I don't get to see.
we have 3 pages in our packet, which is the contact information from the application, that's page 1. We have the project information, which is kind of a narrative, the facility information, kind of a little grid, and that's what we have.
I guess the line we need to figure out is how to keep the,
It would be simple to do.
yeah.
They're not, I don't think anybody, well, somebody might be looking for additional information, but I think there's summary information that's much greater than what's in here that we could base our decisions on. And I think that's really what Jeff's talking about, is there's some really good summary information that would be very helpful, and we can put together a template, put that information in there, and
Yes, I think that's probably possible. The other thing that I would like to see, even if it's in very draft form or if it's in outline form, is the contract that we're looking at, because the contract will spell out how many FTEs, how many total dollars, over what time period, all those. I would like to see that summary information at some point to know what we're really signing off on.
And we don't draft that until after you have discussed it and approved it, because we won't know what you're.
I'll take a bullet list.
But yeah,
Okay.
wouldn't that not make more sense to, I mean, we know the amount that we're approving, but based on what grounds, would that not make more
And I
sense?
think, and you'll remember, there's a report that should be provided to the Odessa Development Corporation, and I think it would outline all of those things. And
Well, it was the summary sheet like this, like this.
no, there's a report that is supposed to be provided that's.
It's just a summary of it. We didn't have a specific report that we did. We just summarized. Actually, used to, when Joel was doing this, the contracts were in the packet. We did not do anything until we had an agreed upon contract with the customer, with the client. No, but that was the way Joel did it after he left, and it changed. There were some changes made to it, which is, I mean, we could do whatever. We just needed some direction. Just let us
Yes.
know what you want.
Okay,
And-
go
And in
ahead.
the policy, am I correct, Tina? In the policy, it speaks of a report, and there's some guidelines for that.
You guys, I mean, I think
They
that
don't.
Joe prepared the contract in lieu of perhaps having the
Yes,
report.
yes.
But
But-
it does speak to a report, yes.
Yes, and I think that report, if we worked on requirements for that, would be helpful also.
So we just need, like I said, just let us know what you want from us, and we will make sure that it gets done.
Okay,
Not a problem.
Because in the broad parameters of the deal, I want to make sure that when we get to the point of final contract, that we have something to refer back to. This is what we voted on. It was so many FTEs, it was so many dollars over so much time period. We need to look in that contract, make sure we've defined things like FTEs and how we're calculating those, payroll dollars, what's included there. I mean, we need some of that definition in there that maybe we don't have, so that everybody is aware of exactly what we're being asked to vote on.
Yeah, because that
would go to help
information,
Weaver tremendously.
and you being in compliance committee, you know that that's the information that is what builds the initial analysis that ends up being the source of the recommendation, because the application does have all the numbers, and we sit down and we say, okay, they say they're going to create 17 jobs. Put that in the matrix, what does that look like? So these numbers are based on those application numbers. So what you're asking is, you want to make sure the compliance committee maybe look at the matrix and the application? Would that be, we can't do that, or?
well, I think what we need to do is, after the first of the year, we need to have a workshop amongst ourselves up
On
here.
how it all works?
Because we've had some members before, and our new members are not getting the information they want, and whether it be bullet point like he's asking for.
Mm-hmm.
But we're gonna get bogged down in this if we don't get it addressed and find out and get everybody on the same page, including our other two that are
And I
missing.
think at that workshop, we ought to have a proposal that says,
Yeah.
here's what we think that you want, and then we tweak it
Yeah.
if we want to. Do you have the information today, in addition to, so the number of jobs is,
74.
okay,
74
let's-
jobs.
Correct, 74.
So can we get some clarification on that as well? This is one of the things we talked about in compliance is, at the end of year one, this many jobs.
Mhm.
At the end of year two, this many jobs total. Because a lot of times I think it gets very ambiguous. It's at the end of year one, we have 3 jobs. At the end of year two, it says 15. So at the end of year two, are we talking about 15 total jobs? Or are we talking about 18, the 3 plus the 15? So you send some clarification in the contract so that we know specifically, this is the number of FTEs and this is the amount of payroll. Because it's, even on the contract, to me, it's still ambiguous.
okay, and the payroll was $1,097,000 or something like that, annual payroll? Isn't that what you said?
I don't know. I didn't bring the numbers with me. I'm ill
I
prepared.
thought I thought I was writing them down as you were reading.
Oh,
That's
that's the grant.
the grant.
Oh, excuse me,
Yeah.
excuse me, I'm sorry, you're right.
No,
Two
you're right.
ways, if they
You're
built or if they rented.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I guess I can pull it up in my email.
Well, then, is everybody in agreement with that? Let's just get ourselves together and then be able to hand them
Yeah, I guess
exactly what we expect.
And then we've got some good information on the
Yeah.
capital investment. That was provided.
I know it. It's one of those big ones. Mr. Patana, I apologize.
Does that help you? Remember, there's 2 different ones in here.
Nope.
In that you've got, this one is for roads. No. One's for roads and one's for NEO. So this is roads.
Question is, what is the proposed payroll that they put on their application that we put into the matrix that generated this grant amount? Is yours pulling up?
And it's trying.
I'm thinking it's gonna be somewhere south of, no, that's not right. It's gonna be better than that.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be. This help you? I'll give it to you if you need it, Tracy.
If it was the one that they revised, it would help.
Pretty sure. Oh, here's the other part. I bet you this is one you're looking for.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. Yes,
Sorry, I'm
that's
giving you that.
much. Okay, so the annual is actually 74.
It was 74, not 71. That was corrected in
Yeah.
compliance.
So it's it's gonna be about $5 million
Okay,
worth of annual payroll.
all right, that makes sense.
And so then the base, benefit was, 1.8 million, and they get 60% of that because it's a diversification
Yeah.
project.
I don't think we need to go through them. I'm not
Okay.
interested in going through the matrix.
Okay.
I just wanna know what we're basing it on. 74 jobs and $5 million in payroll,
Yes.
and we're giving them, $1,000,001 basically.
So at the end of year
Over
3, they'll
5
have
years.
74
Yes.
FTEs.
Right, and it's a ramp up. I think
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
obviously year 1 is going to be the lowest, and year 2 and year 3.
I've got a question too on this ramp up on the jobs. What's the first year you have?
13.
13, and I think after our meeting, last meeting, they've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 38 to 50 applications right now.
Okay.
But
And
we
probably
only
gonna
pay
be a lot
them.
more.
We have a set amount, is it per job that we have it, or is it a certain amount each year?
Well, and that's what, you can do it either way. I mean, we
I
can
know,
do
but
it based on.
which way have we got it set up here? Cause I can
We
see.
don't,
Okay.
either way.
It's a
So, yeah, the recommendation to pay it's a dollar amount over 5 years. If you guys want to do a pro rata, per the ramp up to match
Yeah.
percentage wise, is that what you're asking?
Is that, well, is that up, how's it written? How do we
It's
have it
not.
set
Well, it's
up?
not written.
It's just a total over 5 years, and they normally divide by 5.
Yeah, normally
10% a year.
Yeah, we divide by
So we can
5.
do it, yeah.
Okay.
But that was a good point. That was something we talked about was, you know, in 1 year they're doing 13 employees and it's $1 million, or for $200,000. And second year they may do 30 employees and it's $1 million. And next year they may do 40 employees. So do you want to do it pro rata, or do you
I don't know,
continue?
I was asking if it's set up, but it's set up right now just
Yeah, we
based
just
on
write-
the original
We have done
contract,
most of
okay.
them, just
Okay.
equal payment over 5 years.
Okay.
And if, I think where you'd make the difference in whether you, pay it equally every 5 years is there a dramatic difference in the ramp up? You know, if in this particular case, it was 50 jobs the first year and 74 the rest, it's not a big deal. But if it's 15
It's
or
13 in the first year, 25 in the second
yeah,
year,
you
and
might,
36 in the third year.
yeah, you might change it. I mean, but we have the
We have the ability.
we can do it.
Yeah.
We can
If
do it
the-
like we want it.
Yeah. Cause it's all still in arrears.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
I told Mr. Edgman I'll be abstaining from this vote because Rhodes is a customer of mine, so I don't wanna speak specifically to this project, but I think in general, I'd like to see us come up with some way to ramp it if we're ramping it.
Question, did they decide whether or not they were gonna rent or build, or is that still out up in the
I
air?
think that's.
Right, and
If
that
it's still up in
was,
the air, do we need to give them a kind of a two-pronged approval then?
and that's what the recommendation is.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. So
much
one of them
is
is
That's what I was thinking.
the 73,000 if they lease, and the other one was the 461,000 if they build, and that's the $10 million build proposal.
I don't have a problem with the numbers. I just think we need to decide whether or not we wanna, do basically the $1 million or was it 1.8, 1.6? What are the two? It's $1,086,000, and then what's the other if they build?
Oh, the lease is 1.387, and if they build, it's the 1.848.
Okay, so the grant would be $1,387,000 or $1,848,000?
Right.
Okay, so whether divided evenly over 5 years, or do we wanna pro rata based on,
Let's keep the way we got it over 5 years.
What's their expectation? I mean, what do they think they're gonna start with?
Well, they're saying that they're
They're
only
gonna
gonna
start
do
big,
13
they've al-
Yeah,
Yeah.
13 jobs the first year, and they'll
Yeah.
add 25 the next, and then 36 the third year, for a total of 74. And that's just how they broke it down. I mean, they could create, a lot more jobs than that. A lot of it depends on, like you say, the number of contracts that they get for those homes, and how quickly they can get started.
What if we did like 10% the first year, 15% the next year, and then divide the last 3 years out evenly?
I don't have a problem.
I don't know, that sounds good.
Yeah, divide the
Makes
remaining
more
balance.
Yeah, so put the other 65% evenly over the last 3 years?
Yeah, so you avoid
that's where the
being heavy
majority of the
weighted
growth
in
is.
the last 2 years. That'd be good.
I think it's a good idea.
So 10 the first year, 15
15.
the second.
We get the
And
total
then
jobs.
just divide it out
Then
evenly.
75%, 25% each year over the last 3 years. Yeah. Mr. Robinson?
Okay?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So
Okay.
So move.
I get a
Second.
motion in a second. Norma, did you get all that?
Of course she did.
It's starting to sound like a compliance meeting.
Okay, all,
Approval or discussion.
we have a motion in a second.
For us to
All in
make
favor
decide.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And one abstention.
And one abstention, yes, I'm sorry, yeah, note that. Consider approving economic development agreement with Taylor Holdings, Inc., Sudden Services, Jefferson Cox, again.
And the Compliance Committee is recommending the ODC board to fund Taylor Holdings a job creation and capital investment grant of $885,000 per the matrix to be paid over 5 years. The grant is more, so we have two different funding levels on the matrix. One of them is the 30% for oil and gas, and the other one's the 60% for diversification. We just kind of went straight into the middle of this one, given the nature of the business and what they're going to be doing, as well as using a 45% level of funding also kind of mitigates the issue that they're trying to deal with on getting the water out there to meet code for the fire lines out there.
Yes, okay. And I think since this was written, I think that since California's not allowing the diesel vehicles, that they're moving a lot more of that to our location here. And,
So the 885 is a combination jobs and capital investment?
Yes.
Correct.
So how's it divide, I mean, what do you,
Okay,
how much of, I mean, is it separate, can you separate those two numbers out?
Yeah.
yeah, okay, so the job creation grant is, was originally, 528,972.30, and the CapEx was 92, for a total of the 621, and then they split the difference between the 30% and 60%, which was, an additional 200,000, so it made it 885. They were kind of trying to help them put in a water line for the
All right,
fire
so I'm gonna
suppression.
guess it's 650 and
Yeah.
235, something like that?
Yeah.
That's just, that's just,
Yeah, it's pretty close.
all right. So, how many jobs? How many
So
FTEs?
31 new jobs and 24 retention jobs. Or, sorry, 31 retention jobs, 24 new
New
jobs.
jobs, yeah.
I got those backwards.
Okay.
And we did meet with them earlier this week on the water line issue, where they were telling us
Yep.
that their project is growing as we speak, so it could be even bigger than what this.
Do the new jobs ramp up?
No, they
No.
plan to have those done within
Yep.
the first year.
Okay.
Yeah, year one.
I
They
would,
really want to do it.
I would move, to approve the 885 grant, and divide it, evenly over 5 years.
Okay. Got a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Okay. And on that one, Jefferson, and I'm not sure if we need to, or we need to, or Tracy, if you'll keep tabs of that. One thing that they've gotta get water and sewer out to that, and there's, I mean, they're going 4 different directions on trying to get it, and how much, and whatever, and if they can't get that, then the whole deal goes down. And we need to make sure that we stay on top of that, so we release this 885 as soon as we find out if something's, if they're not, if it's not, they don't make it.
They, Rachel did contact me earlier today, and I did send her some information on some
Okay.
available property outside of, in Ector County, because they're looking at those options too.
Okay.
What is their challenge, Tracy, on the water and sewer side?
Well, they're just gonna, the cost of putting in the water line.
Is it just distance, just?
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Distance and scope.
the
Yeah.
scope of the amount.
And it's in city limits, but the water's not there. And they were pretty adamant they wanted the city to supply it, the city said no, so.
Yeah, because the original plans did not include having to have the size of the sprinkler system, and then the city came afterwards, and I guess per the fire code, it was a secondary requirement.
Yeah, they were
It's a
grandfathered in when they were annexed originally.
It's a cluster.
And,
Okay.
but
No.
when they started doing an addition to their building, then now they do have to follow city code.
Is the city holding a hard, I saw Mr. Marrero come in.
He's-
Is the city holding a hard line on that?
I wouldn't say that. We met with the city yesterday, and they're helping them go at every angle that we can come to.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's a hard line, Mr. Russell, but that is the law. We're following fire code. Fire code would require that the line be available for that.
Yeah, I think you're a hard line of not paying for it. That line is, and that's where I was trying to help you there and tell you, we have worked with them, met with them yesterday, and we're trying to figure out every angle.
Was that a difference between the old building codes and the new 2018 codes that we adopted? Was that, or was that in the old code as well?
I think it's probably in the old code.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the buildings that do have fire lines, that brought the fire line to themselves, it was a requirement of the building code 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
just the building code.
Thank you.
And they're building a whole brand-new building, which throws everything that has to be brought today. Okay.
What name are they gonna operate under?
It's
Sudden Services,
Sudden Services,
Inc.
Taylor Sudden Services.
Okay, item number 6, consider approving an application for infrastructure incentives by Odessa Housing Finance Corporation.
Excuse me, can we get a vote? We got a motion and a second. Can we just make sure?
Oh, I thought we
just wanna be
voted.
sure.
Okay, all in favor of the last project, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Where do we stand on that?
So the OHFC Housing Infrastructure Grant Request, Compliance Committees, we're sending this one back to the ODC Board for consideration. The request does not meet our current guidelines of the Housing Infrastructure Program. And in Compliance Committee, we are not the ones who decide to change program parameters to meet a certain request. That's, we have the rules in front of us. It either meets them or it doesn't, so we're punting.
We're punting back, and I caught the punt.
So essentially,
Last meeting, so here we are.
So the long story short, it's in compliance, and we can provide infrastructure money, but it's nowhere close to the timing or the dollar amount that is anywhere useful to
And
make the
correct-
project happen.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because the way the grant's worded right now, it's like a $10,000 maximum, and you can't do it for less than 25.
That's correct.
And I think, I wish Chris was here, because Cole, he admits that when, that was 3 or 4 years ago, and it is way out of whack right now, but it's not, compliance is telling us it's not their job to change that. It comes back to us, okay?
Correct.
And I think we do need to. I think we need to take a really good look at that. I think it's a really good program. We just want to make sure we cross the Ts and dot the Is and give our builders and our developers and Odessa Housing Finance basically a grant program they can actually use.
Right.
So I
'Cause this
don't
one-
know if that needs to be done in our little workshop or whatever, but I actually had lunch with Jill yesterday and we talked about it. And I mean, I support the whole thing. Think it can be great, but we want to do it right.
Right. And the way it's set up now, it has to be changed, and
So there has to be some analysis done to determine what the typical costs are, and then that has to be presented to us to determine whether or not how much of that we want to fund, if any, and whether we want the program to keep going, and
Well,
that's right.
Not only that, but to make it work, they're needing funding on the front side instead of the back side.
Correct.
So you've got to
That's-
look at
that's
the
our
proper
biggest-
way to do
that's our
that
biggest
and the proper way
challenge.
for us to secure that for ODC. Not that it's impossible, I think it can be done, but we've got to really dig into that and find a way to do it.
And it can be done by bonds, but we gotta dig in and find out who's gonna get the bond, and I know I'll guarantee it'll be paid to ODC, cause that's he needs the money paid back if something happens, but I don't know if it's Odessa Housing, the contractor, all that's gotta be worked out.
And the second consideration at the end, one of the important things is if changes are made to this program, how do we go back and look backwards in arrears to the grants that have been awarded according to the existing rules? Do we go back in and up those amounts? Do
Okay.
we change the timing of those amounts?
I'm fixing to say, I think out of the 5 million, we've only spent 30,000, 50,000, so, but I agree with you, we need to back up, and also back up.
Those projects are done though. I mean, I'm aware of where those are. I mean, I don't see any need to look backwards.
I'm more concerned of the projects we turned down,
Yes, the one, yeah.
not
some
the
of
ones that we did.
Well,
ones
and
we
the other
turned
issue
down.
is, there's also people that didn't even get to the application process because exploring the program and going through the program, the fact that it didn't fit their needs because of the arrears, never even got to the application process.
I'm not as concerned about that because even at the city council level, policies, procedures change over time. And so you can't go back and say, 5 years ago,
They
when
can
I
always
looked at this.
reapply.
Yeah, they can always reapply under the new guidelines, absolutely.
So who's gonna do the research and how's that gonna?
Tracy is.
Not me.
No, we'll have to
I
come
mean,
up with that.
I'll be glad to be involved in that.
Yeah.
If I can.
And I think Chris Crow was, Chris
Kroll, I like.
Chris.
That's why it kind of gets us both there together. Kroll, how do you spell that?
Chris Cole
Is that C-R-O-L-E? Okay.
was very involved in writing that up, and he said at their meeting, he was agreeing with you. They were on the same page saying, hey, wait, if we've got $500,000 set aside and we haven't used any, or $5 million,
$5 million.
and we haven't used any, obviously it's not effective. We need to address it.
Correct.
That's in my opinion, that's our problem.
Right.
That's correct.
Not yours.
Right.
Correct.
And that's basically that's
Not
what
yet.
we're doing. So, I don't think,
So do we wanna assign that task to Chris Kroll?
I think we need to
Spelled with
have
a W.
Chris and Chris be the two of at least three that do that, because they were on the same page at our meeting right there, knowing exactly what we
And
did.
Jeff's
I'm
volunteer.
happy to help.
Jeff?
Jeff volunteered and has a lot more experience in development.
Well, and you'll know what
than I
Chris
would.
did when he put it together in the beginning. So,
Whatever.
That'll work.
note that in the minutes that those three are in charge.
So at this point, would you like a motion to table this or to just deny it for now and reapply later? What would you like, Mr. Chairman?
Well, what they brought to us, it's our problem. He punted to us.
Correct.
Do I need to vote to
Well,
catch the
I would
punt?
make it.
It's on your agenda.
You know, Chris and I were at lunch together with Jill Miller. I would make a motion that we just deny this request with a suggestion to reapply afterwards. I think Odessa Housing Finance Corp would be fine with that approach, and just let them reapply, because then we'll have a new program, new things to fit in there, and
Okay.
We can move forward on that basis.
So I've got your motion,
Second.
and Chris's second.
And I would be in favor of that as long as we're not sending a negative signal to them. That's very clear that here's what we're doing.
I think we.
Yeah.
From our
conveyed that
conversation
properly.
yesterday, that's no
Okay.
problem.
Okay, all right. Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes. Thank you.
Would you like to establish a committee, to work on those guidelines? Is that what,
The
We
two
just-
Chris's.
We just got voluntold.
yes,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
And let the minutes show that I was
That.
not volunteered.
Yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything else for me, gentlemen?
Nope, I think that's it. Okay.
Thank you.
The committee reports, partnership did not meet in January, but I think we've got a February date set.
No, we have, not in December, we do have a January date set,
Okay.
the 12th.
All right, and then a tax incentive, Melanie and David, I don't think anything happened there.
No.
Advertising, myself, and I don't think we had anything this last period. And then, downtown grants, Jeff.
The only comment on downtown grants we've had, and I'm not sure where the confusion has lied, you know, we made amendments to that meeting or two ago. Those were approved. There still seems to be some, and Mr. Marrero's gone, there still seems to be some discussion with DOI. You know, are we under the new rules? Are we under the old rules? And we kind of keep seeing this back and forth through email. But my understanding is we would all be under the new rules. So whatever those new, the new review process is and all that, that would be in effect for any currently pending or new
I think the
application.
only confusion was for those that had already started the process before the new rule adoption. But I think anything moving forward after adoption is gonna fall under the new rules.
I want to be careful there that if they applied before the date of the rule change, they'd actually made application, they would be under the old rules. If they apply afterwards, even if they had started before, they would be under the new rules.
Say that again. So,
Okay, so if they had actually made application
Application
at a date predating our meeting
Yes.
where we adopted the new rules, they would be under the old rules.
that's my
If they made
understanding.
actual application after that date, they would be under
Correct,
the new rules.
correct, yes, sir. You are correct. I would agree with that.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno, and we motion for adjournment?
Not yet. Oh, I've got one question.
Oh,
Ms. Muncy, so at one point we'd talked about notification for future contracts that would be coming up and talked about possibly letting us know like 5 months in advance, but we haven't talked about anything since then. Do you know of any contracts coming up January, February, March, April, May? Basically so that we would have this all, so we'd have time to review it if it needs to be put out to bid. We have more time to focus on that. Do you know of any contracts coming up between now and May that ODC is gonna have to approve? I'm not talking about grant contracts, I'm talking about vendor contracts.
Well, the CVA contract is one that y'all talked about possibly doing an RFP on,
I think we said like February, March is what we talked about.
probably.
I'm just trying to give us
There's a
time to.
possibility of the audit contract. Generally, ODC follows whatever the city does because all the record keeping of ODC is part of the city's books. So it's just simplistic to have the same auditors doing both audits. I don't know if the council will guide us to take that out for bid. We are still in a conversion process on some of our programs. We just took utility billing live, and they might want to extend the audit for another year and go out for the following year audit. So that one's still kind of not decided as of yet.
So other than auditing and CVA, what other contracts do we have with our vendors that we?
Don't know of any other
Is our auditing just Weaver, or do we use another company for the
It's
audit you're talking
Weaver.
about with the city?
We use Weaver for the audit. We also use Weaver for the compliance work that they do on the grants.
Okay.
The only other thing I can think of is the officers, directors, insurance. We generally have stayed with the same insurance if y'all wanted to look at something different.
I just think we need to do our due diligence and, and what I mean by put it out for bid, I don't mean throw it out on the bulletin board that for some reason, whether it be county, city, or whatever, nobody ever looks at, but to diligently put our needs in front of a few companies out there and say, hey, would you like to bid this?
Okay.
Thank you,
I'm
ma'am.
not aware of any other contracts.
Cindy, that comes up in like September, October, doesn't it?
The audit.
No, the officers.
Contract.
No, the insurance policy.
It comes up for renewal in August.
August, okay. All right,
Thank you, that answers my question.
okay. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed, same. We are adjourned.
Thank you, sir.
Go to work, Al.
Yes, sir. Get back to Santa's workshop.
Yeah, don't have many days left.
And all of Santa's things that he needs are floating in a container somewhere off the coast of California, apparently.
I love it.
Birthday lunch with her best friend from Big Spring. Tracy moved to the house. Anyway, her husband.
I think over
was married
time,
there in
there's
Carolina.
been an erosion of that process. I think that's what's happened. And
4 o'clock she left, she got.
I think it's a simple little template that we can put together.
Or the
Oh,
check,
yeah.
he's gonna check
There'll
those.
be a narrative, there'll be a job.
Just sitting there, right?
And if there's anything unusual with regard to code compliance, waiting or anything like that.
Oh.
It's just like the questions you're looking at. So what we didn't have here was, we did have $1.3 million funding grant for
pull them
example.
out.
But tied to what? But you know, you know, tied to payroll. Basically what we're looking at is what's the grant contract look like? I feel that the contract, when you look back at the contracts we've written, they're still really, really ambiguous, and that's why Weaver's going, it's kind of
God bless her.
too. If we give them,
That's aggravating.
a little more detail in the contract, that this is what we wanna verify, then
They had a record range.
The other thing
I think
is,
it's gonna be more clear on the
if
front side.
everybody in this room that includes says,
I saw it.
and they're not doing it,
I
they're
pulled over,
doing
I
it
said,
for
I'm
you.
just gonna pull over
So
second half. I pulled
mindset,
that line
you're
for
thinking
a while.
audit, you're checking
Go this
everything.
way, and I cut
Review,
off
you're going to know.
miles out of
And that's how I took it.
My days are tough, for $5,000 a pop,
I'm good.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about.
and I'd be closer to an audit than it is, you know what I mean?
Continue to sit down. She was directed to create a policy because we did want to incorporate some of those things in our ODC bylaws. I think
old like me.
Getting old. I tell you what, it's brutal.
I don't know, hopefully it's, hopefully it's done. This was the agreement, and it actually started.